Good evening, my friends. My name is Adam, and I will be your host on A Haunted History, the podcast that will lead you on a spine-tingling journey through the shadowy corridors of the past. From the eerie echoes of ancient castles to the whispered secrets of forgotten battlefields. Each episode will transport you to a different era, where history and the supernatural collide. So dim the lights, my friends, and gather round, as we prepare to embark on a historical adventure beyond the veil. Welcome once again to A Haunted History. Hello, everyone. I'm sitting here with Matt Bell, the general manager of Lemp Mansion. Not only the topic of today's podcast, but also our newest sponsor. And I'd like Matt to introduce himself and tell us a little bit about the Lemp Mansion, its history, and give you guys a little bit of info about it.
Thanks, Adam. My name is Matt Bell, GM, Lemp Mansion Restaurant and Inn. We've been operating here in South St. Louis since 1977 here in the Lemp Mansion. We'll get into the history of that a little bit here. Over the last 46 years, we've been doing an award-winning bed and breakfast here, open for dinner Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night, Sunday fried chicken dinner, all you can eat. Adam knows that's a big pull for us.
It is.
Good fried chicken, the best fried chicken. And tours and parties, all things of that nature. But to Adam's point here on the haunted, I guess a lot of people want to know why it's haunted and why we're considered one of the most haunted locations in the country for sure, and some say maybe in the world. So we'll get to it, I guess. Johann Adam Lemp came here in the 1830s from Auschwitz, Germany, and was a grocer. Also carried with him the ability and the knowledge to make lager beer from Germany, and kind of turned into a right place, right time kind of scenario with the St. Louis area hosting a large influx of Dutch and German immigrants at the time, and they all loved this lager beer that Adam was making out of his grocery store. So he went full-time brewer and stopped the grocery business, founded what was called the Western Brewery, and was a success story. His son William Lemp took over his father's business and founded the William J. Lemp Brewing Company. Built the Lemp Brewery on top of the Cherokee Caves, covered 10 city blocks. One of the largest breweries in the Midwest. Was a little bit before Anheuser-Busch, but they were contemporaries, competitors, and friends. Budweiser is probably the best example of a lager beer that everybody knows, but Lemp's product was Falstaff.
Now, Matt, I'm gonna interrupt you real quick. Is it true, and I can't remember if I remember this right, but didn't Lemp lend Anheuser-Busch the money to start their brewery? I heard that rumor, and I'm not sure if it's true.
Well, that's possible. I can't verify that. But, both being German immigrants in the same place at the same time, I can tell you that I believe it was Adolphus Busch, after William Sr. died, was a pallbearer at his funeral. So that's definitely possible. They were definitely friendly competitors at least. So I'm sure they had a mutual respect for each other. But so William had kind of taken his dad's business into a new form of success with Falstaff beer. I think they made about 7 or 8 different beers, Falstaff being their most popular. Side note on Falstaff, I'm sure you know this already, Adam, but Sir John Falstaff is a Shakespeare character.
Yes.
So, kind of he's a knight, old kind of fat guy, kind of looks like Santa Claus a little bit, always drinking, always jovial. So he's like the mascot, he's like, what's the Simpsons, Duff Man, right?
Duff Man.
So he's their mascot for Falstaff beer, always having a good time. Anyway, so that's where it came from. But so big success, and people still talk about, oh, my dad drank Falstaff all the time. That was under different ownership, but we'll get to that in a second. So in any case, I'm gonna gloss over the history a little bit, just so your listeners know. There's several books, Lemp the Haunting History by Stephen Walker, that do a deep dive on the history of the Lemp family.
It's a great book.
And so those are available. So I'm not going to like try to recite the whole book, but I'm going to give you the once over the history, really just to answer the question of, why people say that this building is so haunted. But anyways, Falstaff Beer, William Lemp Sr. This house, the Lemp Mansion, was built in close proximity to the brewery, 1867. There is, which people ask me all the time, there is a connecting tunnel underneath the mansion here, goes a few blocks and connects to the Cherokee Caves under the brewery. So you could traverse underground from the house here to the brewery at one point. We've never had access to those caves from this location. I imagine they were sealed off when William Jr. sold the Lemp Brewery to International Shoe Company. That would have been 1921. But anyway, so a lot of unique features to the house. About 10,000 square feet, built for William Sr. and his wife Julia Lemp, who had 8 children. Not all of those 8 children grew up here. Some of the kids were already adults by the time this house was built. But in any case, if you visit us here, we've named a lot of the rooms after members of the Lemp family, not necessarily because that was their room, just because they're part of the history. But anyway, so things are going great for William Sr. He's got the big mansion. He's on the board of directors for the 1904 World's Fair, which was going to be a big deal. It was going to showcase Falstaff beer, amongst other things. The invention of, was it hot dogs and ice cream and
Yep.
These things.
Cones.
All the
tea.
stuff associated with it. In 1902, Frederick Lemp, one of the 8 kids, passed away of some form of heart failure. And so when you hear people talk about mysterious death, in the family, I think that's one of them. Some of his distant relatives told me that they were told he had tuberculosis, which heart failure could have been a side effect of, could have been a birth defect that nobody knew about, could have been a side effect of Lord knows what kind of medication they were prescribing in 1902 for any kind of ailment. But in any case, Frederick, who was apparently very smart and hardworking and was a big part of the family business, passed away at 28 years old in 1902. And people said that his dad never really recovered from that loss. And in 1904, he got back from Gustav Pabst's funeral of the Pabst Brewing family in Milwaukee. There were some Lemp Pabst intermarriages. Got back from his funeral and locked himself in his bedroom upstairs, and said he wasn't feeling very good. And the housekeepers heard a gunshot, opened the room, and found him dead, gunshot to the head. So that was the first suicide in the house here. Julia Lemp, the mom, the matriarch, she lived here 2 more years. 1906, she passed away of cancer. And then the house was inherited by William Jr. And William Jr. Was now the president of the company, had the house here. He was already had his big mansion elsewhere, no longer standing. And so he had this house converted into their corporate offices because it was so close to the business. Made sense. So he took actually the room that we're sitting in right now that we call the office still. This was William Lemp Jr.'s office, his personal office. And he ran the business well up until Prohibition. They kind of stopped expanding. He went through a divorce from Lillian Lemp during that time period, which was a big financial strain and I'm sure emotional stress. Not very common at the time, but
it was also a huge scandal. It was all over the newspaper.
Oh, it was. Oh, yeah, it was exactly. It was. I mean, Kardashian level tabloid stuff. It was every newspaper was all over it. The divorce, the trial was on the front page of the papers. They were, slinging mud, so to speak. She said he carried a gun everywhere. He said, anyways, it was a big deal. But anyways, 1915, Elsa, one of the other 8 children, Elsa Lemp had killed herself apparently in her own residence. which would be 13 Hortense Place in the Central West End here in the city. She may have been murdered by her husband. She married the same gentleman twice. Thomas Wright, I believe was his name. And shortly after their second marriage, he's the one that called William Jr. and said, "Oh goodness, Elsa's killed herself." And then he inherited, her money, which was considerably more than what he had. So there wasn't much of an investigation into that. And I think there's actually, it's been in the works for a while. Do you know Frankie with Fourth City Films?
I think so.
Yeah, he's been working on a kind of a documentary about Elsa's life.
Interesting.
And so it was supposed to come out during COVID, and then that got kiboshed. Anyways, I keep hearing that it's going to come out this year. Anyway, should be fascinating. Anyways, back to our story though. 1915, Elsa kills herself. That's the second suicide in the family. Third death, counting Frederick. And tragedy continues to kind of befall the Lemp family. 1920s Prohibition. So everyone knows what that did to anyone making their money off of the sales of alcohol. Seems like they weren't ready for it. From what I understand, a lot of people in the beer business, especially Germans, are in the wine business. If you're Italian or French, couldn't quite wrap their heads around the banning of wine and beer. They kind of were just kept thinking they were talking about, whiskey and gin and, these hard liquors.
Mm-hmm.
That's really what they were targeting. But if you're Italian, like if you lived on the hill in the 1900s, you're picking up wine with dinner. I mean, you're not having dinner without wine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Probably beer. Germans the same way. Like we're not going on lunch break without beer. What are you talking about? So anyways, it seems like they were surprised and they weren't ready for it to happen. But anyways, 1921 Prohibition is enacted. They almost immediately folded. They did try to make a near beer kind of beverage. But in 1922, William Jr. sells the rights to Falstaff beer and the family crest, which was on all of their products. But people, if you saw it today, you'd recognize the Falstaff crest. At least a lot of people would. But that was the Lemp crest sold to the Griesedick brothers in this very room in 1922, who then continued to make Falstaff beer after 1933. But anyways, that's officially kind of the end of Lemp as a business. William Jr. sells the brewery complex to International Shoe Company. Actually, just it's amazing with this history. You just kind of learn new stuff all the time. So one of the reasons that it sold for pennies on the dollar, it was valued at $7 million right before Prohibition.
Mm-hmm.
And it sold at auction for like $350,000. But they wanted to get it into a bidding war and an auction. And International Shoe was the only people that showed up to the auction. There was only one.
Really?
There was only one bid.
I never knew that.
Right. So
they got it for a steal.
Right. So the only bid, being International Shoe Company, won the bid and bought the whole complex for pennies on the dollar, which was probably another reason to kind of piss William Jr. off. But in any case, shortly after that, in this very room that we're sitting in, 1922, William Jr. Shoots himself in the chest, killing himself, being the third suicide in the family, second one in the house. Now, you will read, if you look into it, that initial autopsy reports said that William Jr. Was found with 2 gunshot wounds to the chest. But that was later redacted by a second autopsy to reveal that there was, in fact, only 1 gunshot wound to the chest. But this, obviously leads to a lot of different conspiracy theories about whether or not he killed himself or was murdered. But be hard to shoot yourself in the chest twice. So that's pretty much the end of the business. The house, though, remains in the family and is inherited by Charles Lemp,
Charles moves back in here, even though he didn't need to. He was a banker, and he was wealthy in his own right. Did not need to live in this house. So you had your mother, your brother, and your father died in the house. Father and brother having killed themselves in the house. Charles was never married, didn't have kids. Basically moved in here by himself. He did have a servant that stayed with him and his dog, but kind of weird. He had an attachment to the house, certainly. Lived here all the way until 1949. Left a suicide note, said, "In case I'm found dead, blame no one but myself, Charles A. Limp," and shoots his dog and then shoots himself. So that was the last Limp that lived here and the third suicide in the home. And after that, it was the home was sold at auction. I don't know what the buying price was at that point, but it was turned into a boarding house or rooming house, and remains a boarding house for the next 25 years. And then my family purchased from the Fenger family, who was running the boarding house, purchased the house in 1975. And my grandparents had 9 kids, and Grandpa always said, I don't know if he said it, but he knew and treated it like having 9 kids, 5 boys and 4 girls, plus him and Grandma, so 11 people. I mean, that's a pretty good staff right there. So you could open almost any kind of business you wanted to. Just had to learn a couple things. So my oldest uncle, my Uncle Dick, wanted to do a restaurant, so that was the original ownership group, was Grandma and Grandpa and Uncle Dick. And we opened in 77 in the basement. We didn't open this floor that we're at now until the early 80s, 82, 83. And then we started renting out rooms in the 90s, and we kind of just do it all now, weddings and all sorts of things. And like I said, that's kind of the gloss over history. You could do a deep dive into the history for hours, but anyways, that gets us up to date to kind of explain the haunted situation that we have today.
Now, I remember there was a report about an illegitimate child that William Limp Jr. had. Now I know there's a lot of hearsay on this. It was kind of kept quiet, but I didn't know what your thoughts were on that.
So, depending on who you talk to with that, there's like probably a dozen different stories that go through there. So Zeke, they call him, as a boy that may have been a child of William Jr. and a servant. And then so the boy lived here in the servants' quarters and died at about 13 due to his illness. He was born somehow physically and or mentally handicapped. And so you have a lot of people that have stories about Zeke, or they would call him Monkey Boy or Monkey Face Boy, or some of his other names. Now, if you talk to some of the psychics and stuff, some of the mediums that come here, they would tell you absolutely there's a child presence in the attic in the servants' quarters. And some say that they talk to him. Now, historically, there's there's, besides stories and oral stories and kind of passed down traditions, there's no documentation that this person existed, which doesn't necessarily mean anything. I think it's pointed out in one of the books. Troy Taylor wrote a book about the Lemp Mansion, and he kind of refutes the claim and says that he did it. He looked into all kinds of archival evidence and records and couldn't find a birth certificate or death certificate or anything that would suggest that this was a real person. However,
it wouldn't be uncommon, though, if they wanted to keep it quiet.
Certainly. And before 1940, most people weren't born in a hospital at all. So if you were born to a servant, possibly even born here, or, in someone's home, maybe the mom's home or what have you. And especially if you're born somehow handicapped, might not even know if you're going to live or not. The taking the boy to a hospital to get a birth certificate might not have been something
that you were going to do. And especially if he lived here and it was kind of a hush-hush situation, you're right. Um, so the lack of physical evidence doesn't necessarily mean anything, but it does beg the question, like, where's the story come from?
Yeah.
So anyways, you got people that say they used to walk down 13th Street here and would see the boy in the windows upstairs and stuff like that. So there's a ton of stories about Zeke that are unsubstantiated, and some are like some people tell you it's 100% true. So one of the many kind of stories. Most of the things that I went over are well documented. The suicides, that's not disputable. That happened. Now where Charles killed himself is debatable. You got several different people say several different things on that. Police report says found dead in his bedroom. There's 33 rooms in here. He lived here by himself. So
which bedroom?
He could have been using any room as his bedroom. He was older at the time and had cancer. And so the prevailing theory is that he moved his bedroom down to the main level here so he could get outside easier. And so the two most common places people say is the bar right over here and the main dining room straight back there. But again, there's kind of different reports on that. One of the interesting things about the history, both Charles and Edwin was the last surviving of the 8 kids. They both destroyed all of their personal artifacts.
I remember hearing about that
before they died. Edwin was 90 or something.
Had his servant burn everything or something.
Yeah. So there are. I'm not saying they don't exist, but I've never seen a picture of the Lemps inside the house.
Could it have been a superstition at that point, or were they?
I don't know. Obviously they weren't carrying around, iPhones with nice cameras on them like we do now. So they probably, pictures would have been a more formal affair. But pictures were still a thing, and they were a wealthy family. So you'd think that there'd be some, they had parties here. William Sr.'s funeral was in here.
You would think that they'd want to show off. They had. Did they have one of the first elevators in a private home? They had a lot of
private home with a shower we were just talking about before we started.
Yeah.
They had this was a showpiece, so you'd think there would have been some pictures of inside of the house, but in any case, I'd never seen them. So, a lot of things are kind of a guess. Where exactly Charles killed himself. We know that William Sr. killed himself in what we call the Lavender Suite. It's the biggest suite. It's the only one that has a bathroom in it originally. So
it's a nice bathroom.
It is cool. So that's the master suite. So patriarch of the home lives in the master bedroom, right?
Yeah.
So anyways, and the police report describes the location of William's office as being this room right here, which makes sense and would be a nice office. Another question people always ask, and I don't have the answer to, is within this room, where did he kill himself? We know he shot himself at his desk. Well, where was his desk?
I would think his desk was probably in front of the fireplace, facing the opposite direction, maybe out towards the hall.
Okay, sure. But back to the fireplace?
I don't know, maybe his back to be warm.
I don't know. Right? So
I wouldn't want my back to the door. That's just me.
No, I always would say if I put a desk in here, it'd be over there, looking out these windows.
Okay, so against the wall, looking out the windows to the street.
Yeah. Here, looking that way, I don't know. Maybe, probably not. You don't want your backs to the window. You couldn't see it. I don't know. So there's different theories. That's my point, though, is that some of the things are just have to be guessed on. Some of the finer details. I will say this: if anybody tells you that they know for sure exactly what happened and when, they're probably full of it.
I've met a few of them.
Yeah. So, anyways, I have also heard people say there is as many as 13 different identifiable spirits in here. Now, we talked about William Sr., William Jr., Charles, Julia. There was a stabbing death here when this was a boarding house. Zeke. So now we're up to 7. Some people say Server, the dog. Charles shot his dog.
I heard the dog has been seen, but that's
I have some stories about the dog secondhand. So that's 8. But some people even bring up this theory. So with the cave tunnel system, the caves being limestone caves, the brewery's built on top of, and then the tunnels here.
it generates. They absorb psychic energy.
Right. So
The river being so close.
so things like that. Maybe the house was haunted before they even moved in, or before maybe it was cursed to begin with.
You never know what the cave system was used for prior. I mean, with a lot of Native Americans inhabiting the land, who knows?
Right. Burial ground.
Yeah, you just never know. Now, it's funny when you mention Zeke. As you know, I've stayed here many times,
Uh-huh.
and I did stay upstairs. I think it was is it the Lincoln Room? It was up in the eaves. It was one of the newer redone rooms. Right where
There's the Lewis and the Frederick.
maybe it's is the Frederick the one with the Widow's Walk stairs?
That's the Lewis.
That's the Lewis.
The other side. They're like twin rooms, but
Okay, so I must have been in the Lewis, but I remember I stayed here with an ex-girlfriend years and years ago, and she stated that when she was in the bath, that the water turned hot and the cold turned off, and she was scolded. And then when she went to check the knobs to see if something was wrong, she noticed that the cold had been completely turned off. And then when she went to adjust it, the heat went completely off, but you weren't out of hot water. She was able to turn the hot water back on. She didn't tell me this until the next morning. Now, she also said that she stayed up a little bit later, and she said the TV would turn itself off. Now, I don't know why she didn't wake me up and tell me this, but she didn't. So yeah, that was an experience that I had here, and that I did attribute to Zeke. I remember I had a bottle of whiskey on the table, and I said, Zeke, help yourself and leave me alone. I had a glass sitting there. Yeah, like let's let me sleep through the night.
Yeah.
But why don't you tell us some of the stories that you have about this place?
Well, so I have literally dozens and dozens, if not hundreds. But I tell you, so what I like to do is kind of use a scale of 1 to 10s. And the higher you go up the scale, the less common the stories are, the less the kind of more spectacular they are. So like ones, for example, like a one story that people get. Now, when I say hundreds of stories, I mean some of my own, some of other people's, some family members, some just guests that stay here and pictures and what have you. But like one stories are, I felt cold. I felt a cold spot. I felt like somebody was watching me. Sunday night, we had a guy. I look around into the night, and he came down. I was like, "Ooh, that was creepy." I felt like somebody was walking right behind me. So, feeling like someone's walking right behind you is not real good evidence of a paranormal activity. Not to discredit it. I'm sure that he did feel that way, but that's kind of a one or a two story. Some of these might include the TV turning off. These things happen; those kind of get up there. And then kind of the mid story. I'll start with a mid story. Okay, before I do that though, I kind of got to describe. There's a common man that people see around here. You might have to edit that noise out. We're doing some construction around here.
Yeah, I'll see if I can. But yeah, it's on site, everybody. So that's why you're getting a little bit of the background noise. Do apologize for it, but life is how we do this. So
yeah, not sure what they're doing. They're cutting someone in half over there or something. Anyways, so the shiny shoe man is what they used to call him. And some people just call him the man. And so when this was the boarding house, the tenants here had this story about seeing a man that they called Shiny Shoe Man. And he would be someone that they would see in the house. These were, you got to remember, this was a boarding house. It's not like luxury apartments. These were poor people, and these were cheap rooms for rent. And so to see somebody with mirror shine shoes that was all dressed up, they were out of place. And so they would see this out of place man from a distance always. And no one ever talked to him or knew who he was. They just would see him, maybe briefly, maybe for a minute, maybe out the window, down the hall, what have you. But so a lot of them had the same story about Shiny Shoe Man. So, anyways, this is someone, a lot of times, that when people see somebody, they kind of describe the same person. So we think it's the same spirit or entity. Honestly, I don't know how it all works in the spirit realm. Anyways, so this was just last year. It was during a lunch. Myself and Makeo, one of the managers here, he's here all the time. You know Makeo.
Yeah.
And so it was just us working lunch, slow lunch shift. We had one table, and I'm in the atrium, and I'm talking to our one table, and I start to walk out of the room, and I look into the parlor coming out of the atrium there, and I didn't look over, but I saw someone walking through the parlor, and I just knew that it was Makeo walking through the parlor, probably about to walk into the atrium, take a look at that table. We're working together, so
Yeah.
So anyways, I walk through the lobby there and into the bar, and Makeo's standing in the bar. And I looked at him like, "What are you doing here?" And he's like, "What's the matter? Why you got the face on your face?" And I said, "I don't know, man. I swear I just saw you walking through the parlor as I was walking in here." And he's like, "I don't know. Maybe you saw a ghost." And he was kind of joking with me. And I said, "I don't know. It was weird." So a few minutes later, I go back to the one table, the customer's there, and the guy looks up at me and he goes, "Does anything weird ever happen around here?" And I said, "Yeah, it does actually, but what do you mean?" And he said, "I was sitting here, my friend went to the bathroom, so I was looking at my phone, as we do, and he said, I saw somebody approaching our table, and so I put my phone down and looked up, because he thought it was going to be me or Makeo.
Yeah.
And so he put his phone down and looked up, and there was nobody there. And it kind of took him off guard. And I said, "Was this like 3 minutes ago?" And he goes, "Yeah, about there." And I said, "Yeah, I think I saw the same person walking towards your table as I left the room." And we were like, "Huh, pretty weird," because that's exactly where the person that I thought was Makeo was walking towards. So, that was a little bizarre. Now, like I said, I didn't see him that good. I didn't really even look. I just could, out of my periphery, see that there was a person walking. So, that's kind of maybe a 5 or something like that, where I thought I saw somebody. Maybe you didn't. I don't know. But another time that I saw the man was, I remember so specifically because it was the day after Valentine's Day in 2021. Did I tell you this story?
No, I don't know this one.
So Valentine's Day was on a Sunday in 2021. And also in St. Louis here, that evening, we got about a foot of snow.
Yeah, I remember that.
Mm-hmm. It was like probably the biggest snowfall of the season, probably. It wasn't really that bad, but it was a foot of snow. It was enough to make some people not go to work. So on Monday, the 15th, I'm driving into work, and Patty, my aunt, who's one of the owners here, she called me. She says, "Hey, but I'm not coming in today. I don't feel like getting out in this." And we're not open on Mondays. But usually it's me, Patty, and the maid here, doing stuff, office stuff, and obviously cleaning the rooms from the night before. So I said, "Yeah, that's fine." I said, "I'm going in." And then shortly after that, the maid called, Heather, and she said, "Hey, I have something about the snow and not being able to come into work." And I said, "Okay, that's fine." And so instead of doing the office stuff that I was going to do, which could wait till the next day, I said, "That's fine. I'll clean the rooms, because they were all rented the night before for Valentine's Day." And, this is a romantic place. It really is.
Yeah.
You don't have to be like goth or totally into spooky stuff to like staying here. It's really just a cool place on its own.
No, I did a couple anniversary stays here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's good. You see what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
You don't have to be some kind of ghost fanatic, person to want to stay here. Anyways, so Valentine's Day, all the rooms are rented, so they're all dirty on Monday rather. And so I started up in the attic, and I started in the Lewis and Frederick back there. And so that the first thing I did was start changing the bed sheets. So I got the bed sheets off those two beds, and I'm walking past the Elsa. I'm coming back down the hallway, walking past the Elsa, and as I'm walking past the doorway, I look over, and there is, plain as day, there's a man standing on the other side of the bed, and he's looking out the window that looks across the highway at St. Agatha's Church. There's a big Polish church over there, St. Agatha's. Pretty church. And we kind of looked down on it, and it was still snowing. And the only thing that I thought at first was, guy's taking in a nice view. I don't know, maybe he's going to take a picture or something. And, I didn't stop. This all happened in the time it takes to look, or it takes to walk past the doorway. But I mean, I did look over, and I almost thought, when I was thinking back on it, I almost thought he kind of looked at me. You know how you might do if you're in a grocery store and you kind of almost make eyes with somebody and give them the kind of classic little head nod, like, oh, hey, how's it going? Anyways, so he's standing there, and I start going down the steps, and I get down about 6 steps, that windy staircase back there, and I stopped, and I went, oh no, there's nobody here.
Nobody's supposed to be here.
You're the only one here. So I threw the bed sheets down the rest of the stairs and turned around. And it took me a second because, a lot of things go through your head. And I was like, should I go back up there? And then my next thought was, well, you have to go back up there. What if there really is somebody up here? That's not supposed to be here. So anyways, I made my way back up the steps. This all happens in, a minute. And so I go into the Elsa and I look around and I say, hello, there's nobody there, obviously. So now I'm looking around and I go all the way downstairs. I check the doors, make sure I'm locked in. And then that happened the first 30 minutes I was here. So the whole rest of the day, every room that I walked into and every time I turned a corner and went down a hallway, and I was jumpy. I was a little freaked out. I was kind of poking my head in. Hello? But anyways, that was actually, I actually saw somebody. And later I kind of questioned myself. I was like, are you sure you saw somebody? And I played it through my head a dozen times and went, nah, there was somebody standing there. So that was another incidence of the man or shiny shoe man, what might have you. But the clearest that I ever saw him was actually just this past November. And I was downstairs, we were leaving. This was actually on a Sunday. We get done with the fried chicken dinner, which is spectacular, if I didn't mention that. We get done with that. We close at 8 on Sunday, so this is probably about 9 o'clock. We're all finished. Everybody clocks out. We all kind of leave at the same time for the most part. I'm usually the last one behind just to double check the alarm, the doors, the delivery door, what have you. There's a handful of things that I need to check as the general manager before I leave just to make sure we're all locked up for the night. So everyone leaves, and I'm just a few minutes behind, and I'm downstairs, and the last thing I'm going to do is walk down that hallway past the ladies' room downstairs, We're going into the vault. So when I say the vaults, just for your listeners, there's 3 vaults built onto the back of the house. They're room size. They're giant room size safes. Big rooms. Probably, what do you think the dimensions on those? Probably 30 by 20?
Yeah, that's what I would think.
They're rooms. And so I'm on my way back to the downstairs vault to check the delivery door. And the hallway's dark, but there's a light switch right to my right that I've turned on a billion times. So I'm walking towards the hallway, and I reach over, I hit the light switch on, and over my right shoulder, I could see that there was something standing there. And I turned around, and there he is, a foot away from me, looking right at me, looking me right in the face. Combed hair, mustache. He's a man, standing right there. And I looked, and I thought to myself, you'll blink, and he'll be gone. And I blinked, and he wasn't gone. And then I blinked a second time, and he's gone. So I stopped for a second, went, okay. Went straight to check the delivery door, went straight outside, locked myself out, and started driving home. And then I started to get it was a little shaky driving home. And so I called my wife, I called my sister, I started calling people. I was like, hey, you're not going to believe what just happened. But clear as day, for a full, I don't know, call it a half second. Usually these things,
these sightings, they're really just like a flash, you know, like a blink. Um, you know, this was probably a full half second, which when you're staring right at a spirit is a long time for that to happen. You know, you can catch these kind of things sometimes in a picture. The thing with pictures, I've seen 1,000 different pictures, and a solid 50% of them, you go, I don't know. But almost every picture somebody has, they're like, this is the coolest picture. And then some of them you look at and you go, I'm not seeing it. I don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and then some you go, wow, that's really amazing. And then there's really you know, a smaller percentage that you look at and go, now that's weird. But still with pictures, you go, that's either photoshopped or that's really crazy.
Yeah.
You know, either good ones.
Or it's dust masquerading as
dust. Yeah. Yeah. So it could happen. But anyways, that was the most recent and definitely the longest time that I saw the man there. Anyways, and I could go on and on. My wife has some good stories from when she was the maid here, and a lot of guests have stories from staying the night here.
Yeah, I had a past tattoo artist that they stayed here numerous times and actually kept a scrapbook of their visits and all the pictures that they took. And a lot of what they considered were orb pictures, but they loved coming here for that reason. And something Matt hasn't mentioned, but when you do stay here, you're locked in for the night. You can leave when you want, but you're free to roam the halls. So a lot of people take advantage of that.
Oh yeah, almost everybody, I'm sure.
Go around, take pictures, and just kind of see if they can detect anything. It's kind of a fun little thing for the ghost heads to do. But some people just come here for the romance. It all depends on what you're into.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I mean, you certainly don't have to do ghost hunting. I assume most people do. But something that I people ask me a lot, you know, there's just friends that are ghost hunters that get together, and then there's different levels of kind of how much equipment they have, and some of them are like trying to be professional. Some of them are professional, but if you have a ghost hunting group and you want to know how you can do an investigation here, it's really easy. You just rent all the rooms because the staff will leave overnight, and you have all night to do your investigation. Kind of basically whatever you want to do. Now, if you need more than one night or more details than that, then it's something that we can talk about. It can be arranged, what have you. But we even have some people that want to do an investigation and only rent one room. Now, the thing with that, I tell people, if you're really trying to do an investigation, it's hard to do that when there's other guests staying here that are also roaming around that may also be doing investigations. Sometimes they're just running around being silly, and so that can kind of mess with, you know, whatever
if you're actually trying to
evidence, that you're trying to get. So the best thing to do is to rent out all the rooms and make sure it's just your group that's here. But
so I'm actually against this next thing, but I wanted to know if you had a policy on Ouija boards. I'm not for using them, but I would say I didn't know if you guys would come across and say no Ouija boards at all, or
no, we actually have some Ouija boards here, and people can bring them. Like you were just saying, I personally don't use Ouija boards, but it's not anything that's banned or anything like that. So you're welcome to bring whatever kind of ghost hunting equipment or communication devices you need, unless it makes a mess of some sort, and then we'll have to talk about that. But
okay. Is there anything else you want to mention?
Geez, I don't know. When's this coming out?
Hopefully in the next couple of days, I'm going to be releasing this.
Okay, sounds good. We do have a big Mardi Gras event, which is almost sold out. That's going to be on February 10th. It's Mardi Gras brunch. St. Louis is a sister city to New Orleans, French city. So we do a big Mardi Gras here for all of your listeners in other cities.
The second biggest one.
Second biggest one. I mean, there's not a whole lot, but it's the second biggest one outside of New Orleans. Here in St. Louis that we do the Mardi Gras parade downtown, and we're close to the parade. So we have a shuttle that will go from the Lemp Mansion, take you down the parade, and bring you back.
for the brunch here. It's like it's a breakfast and lunch open bar at $65 a ticket. So that's happening on the 10th. If anybody wants to just check out our website at lempmansion.com, we have all of our events for the year. You've been to the Halloween costume party, I'm sure.
That's a blast. I went numerous times.
Yeah, it's a giant house party with live bands everywhere, and everyone's in costume. So everybody looks forward to that. That's a fun time. And all those other things. So yeah, if you want more information about what we do and how you can come here and go on a tour and stuff like that, we offer tours weekly. Just go to lempmansion.com and check out our upcoming events.
And don't worry, everybody. I'm actually going to include this all in the show notes that are going to be connected with this. So you'll be able to go on there, visit the Lemp Mansion's website, and learn more about the history, the menu, the location itself, and then also booking if you would like to book a room or come down for one of the events. Well, Matt, it was a pleasure having you on the show. I always love coming down here. I always love being down here. The food's amazing. The presence is amazing. The history is amazing. And of course, I've known you for years. I'm surprised you still put up with me, but I do appreciate it.
Probably 20 years, I guess.
I think it's been about that.
Uh-huh.
I think it's been about that. But I do thank you, and thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you once again for listening to our show. As always, your feedback is very important to us. So if you'd like to follow us on Instagram and Facebook and comment on there if you have any questions, it just makes our show better. Also, if you'd like to reach out to us personally with a comment or question, or maybe a supernatural story which you would like featured on the show, you can do so at contact@ahauntedhistory.com. Thank you once again, and have a good evening.